Welcome back, friends. This is the final module on this course on OOCP. Let us talk about continue talking about the object model, C++ object model. What we are going to do in this particular module, we are going to look at some ways the compiler is going to change the code. Obviously, we have seen the reasons why the compiler is going to do that for us. We will start with something called copy constructors. You have already learned about them. So, we have already seen how default constructors requires change. So, copy constructors also would be needing them, and we will say that bitwise copy semantics and bytewise copy semantics. We will throw some light on that, and we say that how the compiler changes the code for optimization. We will throw some light on that. And what does C++ object code do, and we will take an example of demonstrating that part. It modifies the object definitions at times, it also modifies the function calls. We have already seen how member function calls are modified. We also will see how the assignment statements are modified. It also requires to adjust pointer values at times. We have already seen an example of that in the previous module. Adjust the code as per the static or dynamic calls. So, we will talk about all that in this particular module. We start with the copy constructor. For example, if I have a class called myDetails, okay, and it contains some information. Now, if I have myDetails Ganesh, this thing, now this is a constructor that I am calling with specified values. Now, I am calling this myDetails Karthikeya from Ganesh. Now, obviously, this invokes copy constructor, but that copy constructor, do we need to synthesize a copy constructor? Do we need to augment anything? In this case, there is nothing which we need to augment, we do not need to. But then, as I said, there are cases where nobody, neither the user nor compiler wants synthesizing. Okay. This actually is a copy. Normal copy constructor only copies everything from one object to the other. That is called bitwise copy semantics. It copies copied bit by bit without looking at the member boundaries and all that is pretty fast. And that is what generally people do when they write a C program. When you assign a struct with some other, everything from this structure is copied into this structure without really worrying about the boundaries of these members and all that. So, the same thing will happen here, that is called bitwise copy semantics, and when that is done, the copy is as fast as the C code. But sometimes you can't do it. For example, if you just define class deity, where there are 3 string objects, okay, and you have Ganesha as Kailash, Shankar and Parvati, this is the address, father and mother name. And now, when I say deity Karthikeya equal to Ganesh, which is the same thing, it invites copy constructor. Now, you can't just have bitwise copy semantics, because all 3 of them have their own constructor. I will have to have a member wise copy semantics, where every member is copied separately using their own copy constructor. Okay. So, I can't use the bitwise copy semantics in this case, I need the bytewise member wise copy actually, not bytewise. Okay. The second case is embedded object, like we have seen before. Assume that I have a face a default constructor, copy constructor already defined, the copy constructor for all the elements already defined. I will have to have the copy constructor generated or provided, constructed by the compiler. This kind of a statement demands that kind of a copy constructor, because the items cannot be copied. Okay. If I exhibit bitwise copy semantic, everything which is there in Ganesh is copied to Karthikeya like this, is not going to work, because every object has its own copy constructor. You can't just copy a circle into another circle as it is. We will have to follow the semantics given by the programmer. If you do not follow it, it is not going to work the same. So, here we need an additional copy constructor provided by the compiler. Okay. So, same with the same logic. So, the synthesized copy constructor would look something like this. Okay. So, the address is copied into temp deity address, and father name is copied here, this thing is copied here, based on, now this is going to call a strings copy constructor. Okay. In this case, will be the same thing. Okay. The additional one is called, where every object is copied into the other object, inviting typical copy constructors of that typical object. Okay. What if a class contains a virtual function? Okay. Copying VPTR will be a problem, because you can't just do it when you copy an assignment statement. Remember, I said that the assignment statement will have a problem. Let us look at this. Student, I define pointer to a student, and then I define an MC a student, and now I say that a student as equal to MS. Now, is this going to work? Now, that is going to be a problem. A problem is because when I say that student as equal to MS, is normal assignment will do what? Okay, the MCA student contains two parts, one is student sub object and the additional things that the MCA student defines, but then there is a VPTR. So, when this is copied, normally every element of MS is copied into S, but then VPTR, I cannot copy the MS VPTR into S, because if that is done, later on when I call, for example, get marks, if I call S dot get marks, after this assignment statement, if the VPTR is also copied, S dot get marks function will call the get marks function of MCA student and not a student. Now, that is something I do not want. So, it will not copy the VPTR, will find out which object it belongs to and assign a typical VPTR to it. It will also point to a typical virtual table, okay, because it should not point to the MCA student's virtual table, but should point to the normal student's virtual table. Okay. So, that VPTR, this normal assignment copy construction will not take place here. Okay, that compiler will intervene and do something there. Okay, what compiler will do? Okay. Now, this is not acceptable. Okay. The student got get marks. If this is copied, if everything is copied as it is, we have a problem. Okay. So, proper VPTR value is to be done. So, what actually is done is MS student dot student okay, VPTR. It will done this. Okay. So, the copy is actually it will pick up the student sub object and VPTR, which is part of it, is copied here. So, this statement this actually compiler will do this. Okay. Now, the third case, another case, the inherited object layout case. Okay. The normal student object looks like this. Okay. And this is a data member of this thing. We have already looked at this. I do not want to talk more about this again. And this is anyway I talked about. So, MCA student object contains two VPTRs, and you shouldn't be copying this VPTR, but this one. Okay. Now, this is virtual inheritance case that we have seen in the previous module. You can see that copying members will. Now, this is a normal inheritance case where you have two copies of the base class object, sub object. In this case, virtual inheritance, you have only one copy. Okay. So, virtual inheritance, you can see that, for example, assignment like this, what will happen? D2 equal to DD, you just take, what you need to do is, I need to, if this is the DD object, I want to assign this thing to a D2 object, you will have to take this part first and then this part. Okay. So, that actually is to be done physically. So, compiler will have to intervene and do it. When I do it with D1, actually I do not need to, because compiler will just strip off this part and assign, simple, that is not a problem. Okay. But all subsequent, this is the first data object, okay, the first one. So, the first virtually inherited class, you do not have a problem, you can just take this sub object and assign, but in the other case we will have to find out the base class as well as the derived class part. If I have 10 probably and I am asking for the 10th object, I will take this base class, skip this part and pick up the 10th part, combine both of them and return. Okay. So, that is. So, a statement of this type D2 equal to DD and D1 equal to DD are in fact d1 equal to dd does not demand anything, it will just pick up the top part and assign. Here it is not so, we will have to actually pick up two separate items and combine and present here. So, the compiler will have to change this assignment statement into that. We are not actually writing how compiler do it, but that is to be done. One more thing is something that you probably have studied, and if you have not studied, this is also simple. If I want to write a function called letter, I have two times and I will time objects and I will look at them and return a time which is letter out of these two. So, I define the function like this, time letter time 1 t2. Okay. So, the two, this value parameter passing concept, and I just, and there is something called time in seconds. So, I am just comparing and returning either of them. Now, the second version is little different, instead of returning time I am returning reference to time. Okay. The third case I am also referencing this and also passing constants. Now, what is the difference? The difference is that when in the case number 1, there are three things that is needed. This is a return type and this is the first value, the second value parameter. Okay. So, this will have to change actually. So, there is a temporary variable defined temp time 1 and temp type 2. Why this is so? Because if a user changes something somewhere, being a value parameter passing, those values should not be reflected back. So, that is why the temporary variables are defined and that value is passed to that function, and a function works on those temporary values and then return back something. And if it modifies those temporary values, those values are not written back to the original value, the function is not actually working on real values. So, we do not need to bother, and that is the reason why these additional two temporary variables are constructed and passed. Okay. And then for returning the later time, we also define one more dynamically, one more variable dynamically. That variable is passed to this function and then at the end it is assigned and then it is deleted. Okay. So, this we have an additional temporary variable defined and used here. Now, these are all overheads. Okay. The first change that we make is that the second version is that we return a reference instead. So, once we return a reference, done, this is not needed, I do not need to do it, I will just pass the very value here which is returned back, done. When I in one convert this to, okay, the first case, okay, this thing, a temp is not required. Okay. So, these three lines are not required. Okay. And again, if you use constant references, the great thing is that I do not need to pass the entire object, I just pass the reference, and if the object is large, it is going to save a lot of time. Not only that, the values are directly reflected in those this thing, okay, because it is being constant, will stop any values being copied if in this case, but if it is you want that, you can even have that. Okay. So, this is the best thing, and many a times compiler does this thing on its own, and that is called name value return optimization. I will not talk more about it. You may read my own book on this, or you may read Stanley Lipman's C++ primer, which describes this to much more detail. Okay. So, what NRV is doing, it talks about here. Okay. Not only that, the other problem now, what if I have two choices available? I have one choice where I have a GLS student as a single hierarchy, I have everything in one, or I have a student, then MCA student, then GLS MCA student, I use inherited version. Remember something that I have talked about before. I want a solution where even in the inherited case, I do not need to have any performance overhead. Performance overhead means if I am accessing an element, a member, I should in ADT or an inherited version should not differentiate, okay, should be accessed with the same time, which is better, it depends actually the design, but if you look from the performance angle, C++ makes sure that the performance is identical by doing a simple trick. We already know what that trick is, it just embeds that base class sub objects within the derived class objects. So, if you access a member which is a derived class member or a base class member, there is no difference. In fact, the derived class object is as good as an ADT object, something which contains all elements together, there is no inheritance. Okay. The efficiency is the same, but then memory is wasted, because instead if you keep a base class pointer, you do not keep a base class sub object, you keep a pointer, you save a memory, but then will be there is a huge performance overhead if the chain is long. So, simple solution is taken as embed the base class sub object within the derived class sub object for this reason only. Okay. And this is something that you can run and see, and this is I have a class called B, then class called D, both of them which is inherited from B, both of them defines int, and I have defined two different objects. Now, both of them have only one element integer, okay. And the compiler on which I run this had 4 byte integer. So, the size should be 4 in both cases, but instead of that the first case says size is 4, the second case its size is 8. Why? Because this is embedded within D contains integer j as well as integer a, because it is inherited from this thing, that is the reason why it is 8. Okay. The discrepancy will be there. Let me give a simple example. I have an MCA student case, which GLS MCA student case, where there is something which is a member of the base class name, and there is something which is class teacher, which is a derived class member. If I have a derived class something like this, I have derived class members one after the other, and there is a pointer to base class. When I access Ganesh.name, we will have to traverse to this pointer. In fact, GLS MCA student is inherited from MCA student, and in fact, student this also is inherited from student. So, you will have a base class pointer which is to student, and name belongs there. So, what will have to do, Ganesh.name, you will have to get Ganesh.name, will traverse one pointer, find out this value of this pointer, and then traverse here. Okay. And if it is a longer chain, we will traverse long, and then we will find out that name value and then do something with it. And class teacher, if it is here, class teacher will access that thing in a single shot. That means, if I am accessing Ganesh.name and accessing Ganesh.class teacher, I am going to have performance difference. Now, that is not that does not happen with C case, and that is the reason why the embedding part is done. So, GLS MCA student will have MCA student embedded within, and MCA student will have student object embedded within, and we do not have any performance overhead. Obviously, there is a memory overhead, and there are a few other issues with that, but that is the reason why we have this embedded object solution. Seems quite crude at times, but the best solution. Okay. Informed overhead for needed functionality, I talked about this in past also. For example, I have something called current location virtual function, and current location is decided based on the class you belong to. So, you are a student and you belong to a specified class, then obviously the location is derived from that point. Okay. So, at any given point of time, the pointer will tell you where it is pointing to, and then based on that you get the current location. Okay. But that is what I am talking about. You will not have that thing in the abstract data type case, and there is an additional thing, a new facility available with us, and that will require an additional overhead. Okay. For example, but then it is not always the overhead, even when you call a virtual function. Okay. You said GLS MCA student Ganesh, GLS MCA student P Ganesh, now this is a pointer to it, and now you say that P Ganesh points to Ganesh and P Ganesh pointer current location. Now, you are exactly specifying, now you know the compiler when compiles this code knows exactly that the P Ganesh is pointing to this object, and so this current location can be easily determined there itself. So, this is basically this is not a virtual function call, this is a normal call and will be resolved accordingly. So, even when it looks like a virtual function call, if it is possible to be resolved statically, the compiler will do it. When it is not, only in that case we will go for the other one. Okay. and I have already talked about this draw case in past. I is just this thing recap of that. So, I am skipping that part. What are the overheads? Now, in this case, see what I am doing, and this is something we have already seen, that I have a class called shape, a class called circle, which is derived from it. There is an object called ring. Okay. So, when I call sum shape dot draw, it is basically draw function of this particular class, okay, this particular object. When I said ring dot draw, it is of circles class. Okay. This is statically resolved draw function. Okay. Now, this is different. When I said PTR shape equal to new circle and then this, now this draws obviously a circle because it is pointing there and it is a virtual function. So, now this is now there are three different calls to draw. One is by, and two of them are static calls and this is a dynamic call. Okay. Virtual tables for both shape and circle classes are generated. V table circle is our interest right now. Okay. So, when okay. Now, we'll look at this actually how it is manipulated. When we define circle ring, this statement, okay, circle ring, remember this is a class which contains a virtual function. So, remember the VPTR has to be set. So, how that is done? It says that circle ring and rings VPTR. Now, this is this VPTR is pointing to V table of circle. Okay. V table circle is defined, VPTR this ring is an object, object's value assigned to this. Okay. Every object, if I define circle, second ring, same thing will happen, second ring VPTR will be this one. Okay. So, that is normal. In case of PTR new circle, what will it do? In fact, it defines a new pointer, but it is pointing to circle. So, what will do? PTR circles VPTR is assigned V table of circle. If I say that PTR new rectangle will be PTR shapes VPTR points to V table of circle. So, accordingly, whenever you point to a new object, this VPTR value is reset, and later on if you find PTR shape equal to some rectangle object, later if you define earlier a circle, now rectangle object, which you can always do, compiler will modify this equal to statement, will also additionally change this VPTR value. Earlier it was pointing here, then will be made to point to this place circle. If it was pointing to V table of circle, now it should point to V table of rectangle. It is something like this. Okay. So, a virtual table for circle will look like this. You have this, the first part is shape sub object. It contains data members of shape and VPTR, and the content of the circle object will contain data members of shape, data members of circle, and then there is a VPTR circle. VPTR circle points to a virtual table. This is V table. Okay. V table for circle. The first will always be type info object, and we have only one virtual function called this thing draw. So, it points there. So, this V table contains two entries, entry number 0 a type info object, empty number 1 circle dot draw. So, this is the virtual table for both of them. Okay. A typical example, let us look at a typical example. I have a student S. Now, this is a static definition of an object of class student. Now, it is a dynamic definition of class student using a pointer. I call get marks. Now, this get marks is a static invocation. Now, this get marks is a dynamic invocation, because it depends on where P student is pointing to. Then I call this delete and then return S. Now, this is what I am doing. What compiler will do? Now, this is very critical for us to look at. Look at first thing, student S. Now, student S is converted into this thing. It will call the default constructor. Okay. Not only that, there is no S here. From where that has come? That NRV optimization, it demand, because there is a return value S, there is a return S. we will have to construct the student as and return as. So, what will it do? Instead of that, it will pass a reference and then it automatically returns back. So, that is an additional thing. The compiler constructs that thing, an additional reference which it passes and then returns back, because then I do not need a return statement. Now, that return statement is simply eliminated. Now, that temp students is constructed here. Okay. Now, the second statement is this: student star p student equal to new student. Okay. Now, this is new student is a dynamic case. So, what will it do? If the size of student not equal to 0, so this new is successful, then and then will call p students this thing, will find out the object where p student is pointing to, and then obviously constructs that object, okay, by calling the constructor. Okay. The earlier case, s dot get marks. Now, s is a local object and we will call, this is the static invocation. Remember, static invocations are converted into C like call. So, it will so get marks and this temp student is passed to it, okay. Simple, there is a this pointer to it. Now, this one is the most important one for us. Okay. P student get marks. Now, the point is the compiler will have to find out where p student is pointing to and find out the get marks function where p student is pointing to. Now, that is very critical. How it is converted is the most important part here. Okay. So, what will it do? When I say star p student pointer vptr, what actually I am doing? This star has lesser priority than this. So, this happened first. Now, whenever we are doing something like vptr, this vptr is pointing somewhere, and what we want is, when we say star, we are taking where vptr is pointing to, is basically v table. Okay. So, this star, this thing basically is the v table, and whatever that function is, that entry 1, 2, 3, whatever the value. Okay. So, that is what we are supposed to do. So, that statement is very important for us. Okay. What does it do? See, star p student vptr. So, first of all, we will get the virtual pointer of this to the object where p student is pointing to. Star will give you that v table, and then 2 is the entry. Okay. So, that entry, and now what you pass to that function, now this is a function get marks, and you pass p student to it, this pointer to it. Okay. Now, there are get marks is 1, and okay, also okay, there is one more destructor is the first one, get marks is the second one, and this is the destructor which is calling. Now, destructor, see, if p student not equal to 0, that means p student contains something really important for us, there is a memory associated with it. What we do is p student vptr star, that will again get us that v table. Now, the first function is called with the same value. Okay. What will it do? If this is the case, we will delete that student, simple. Okay. Anyway, with that note, we conclude the final module on C++, OOCP. What we have looked at in this particular module? We have looked at how C++ compiler changes the code with an example, the final example that we have seen. We have seen how internally the code changes to provide all the features that we enjoy, especially like virtual function, how the pointers are changed, how the assignment changes, and so on and so forth. Okay. And once you see all this, you probably will understand first the efforts made by people who write compilers for us, one, and second, sometimes you get some strange errors that will not look all that strange now onwards, because you have some idea about how compilers are doing it. With that note, we will conclude, friends. Thank you all for being with us for so long. Enjoy learning.